I've got some troubling news about England's royal family.
Catherine had tolerated whispers, private disagreements, and years of strained family diplomacy. But this was different. Meghan was standing at the entrance to William's private royal estate. Palace security had stopped her from proceeding, and Catherine was already moving toward the confrontation with unmistakable fury. Then, just as the situation threatened to explode beyond control, Queen Camilla appeared. What she did next transformed an uncomfortable family encounter into a battle over boundaries, loyalty, and royal authority. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Catherine moved fast because this was not simply another disagreement inside palace walls. William's private royal estate was protected family ground, a residence kept apart from public engagements, so the prince, his wife, and their children could have one place untouched by ceremonies, photographers, staff traffic, and wider family tensions. Security there followed a controlled visitor list, meaning no one entered unless the household had approved the visit in advance. Meghan's name was not on it, and that fact made Catherine's anger immediate. Meghan did not retreat when Catherine reached the entrance. She held her position and insisted that an urgent family matter could no longer be passed through aides, messages, or intermediaries. Catherine listened, but her expression hardened. A security officer stepped quietly aside as the two women faced each other, leaving no buffer between the argument and the private boundary Catherine believed had already been crossed. She did not shout. Instead, she lowered her voice and told Meghan that arriving uninvited at a family residence was not persistence. It was a line she would not allow anyone to erase. Then Meghan said something that changed the atmosphere completely. She had not come believing she was entirely unexpected. Someone inside the royal circle, she said, had given her reason to think the visit would be received. Catherine's fury sharpened into suspicion. If that was true, then this was no longer only about Meghan appearing at the gate. Someone had allowed her to believe the gate might open. Before Catherine could demand a name, Camilla arrived and told security not to remove Meghan yet. The queen consort, meaning the wife of the reigning king, rather than the monarch herself, rarely stepped into private access disputes this directly. Catherine turned toward her in disbelief. Camilla did not defend the arrival, but she did ask for 5 minutes alone, saying there was something Catherine needed to hear first. Catherine had believed she was defending her home from an unwanted intrusion, but Camilla's sudden intervention suggested the real confrontation had begun long before Meghan ever reached the gate today. Behind the argument at the gate were 3 women carrying very different histories into the same dangerous moment. Catherine saw a protected family boundary being challenged. Meghan saw a door that had been closed too many times already. Camilla saw something neither of them could yet see clearly: the possibility that one impulsive confrontation might revive every fracture the monarchy had spent years trying to contain. And standing behind all of it was William, whose silence would soon matter more than anyone expected. Catherine felt the threat personally because the estate represented more than status. It was one of the few places where William and their children could exist beyond ceremonies, staff schedules, public expectations. For Meghan, the same locked entrance meant something different. She believed another request would disappear into palace channels, the network of aides and offices managing communication inside the royal household, before Harry and William ever spoke honestly. Meghan held her ground because she believed waiting had failed. She told Catherine that the issue concerned the brothers directly, and another message would only delay what needed to be said. Catherine heard that argument as pressure, not urgency. To her, Meghan had carried a private family dispute straight to their doorstep and created a confrontation in the one place meant to remain protected from that disruption. William received the security update and read it twice. He placed his phone face down, said nothing, then stared at the table long enough for the aide beside him to understand that anger was not the only emotion moving through him. The prince looked exhausted and deeply conflicted. Harry's name had become tied to years of strained conversations, and now Meghan's arrival threatened to drag that history directly into his home. Camilla pulled Catherine aside and admitted that Meghan had contacted one of her staff members earlier. The Queen Consort, the title used for the wife of the reigning king, said Meghan had asked whether a face-to-face conversation might be possible. Camilla had never formally approved the visit, but she had never clearly rejected it either. Catherine froze at that distinction. She told Camilla that leaving the answer open may have sounded like permission to someone desperate. Meghan, still waiting nearby, believed that uncertainty proved she had not imagined a meeting. Camilla insisted she had only tried to keep communication alive, but Catherine's trust had shifted. William finally made his decision. He would come to the entrance himself. Yet before he could reach them, Catherine told Camilla this was not the first time a private boundary had been tested. That warning pulled the confrontation backward toward an earlier incident, one Catherine believed had made today's explosion almost inevitable. The confrontation had not truly begun at the estate entrance. Its roots stretched back to one private family lunch weeks earlier, when a conversation intended to calm tensions instead produced a warning everyone remembered differently. Catherine left that gathering convinced the boundaries around her family needed to become stronger. Meghan left convinced direct access was being quietly removed. Camilla believed she could still keep both sides talking. By the time everyone understood how badly that meeting had failed, the damage was already done. Harry's household and William's circle had already fallen into a colder rhythm by then. Practical matters moved through aides, schedules, and carefully worded messages instead of direct family conversations, which meant even small disagreements could harden before either brother spoke. Clarence House, the London residence associated with senior members of the royal family, became the setting for an attempted reset. Camilla had pushed quietly for that lunch because she feared total separation would turn wounded pride into permanent estrangement. Meghan raised the issue first. She asked Catherine whether future family conversations could happen directly, without every request being filtered through staff. Catherine answered carefully, but firmly. Anything involving her children or private residences would continue through agreed security channels. Meghan pushed her chair back and said the rules seemed to change depending on who was asking. Catherine placed her glass down and replied that boundaries were not punishments. Camilla stepped in before the exchange became openly hostile, reminding both women that the lunch had been arranged to reduce tension, not create another fracture. Camilla made the mistake that mattered most after the meal ended. In a private conversation, she told Meghan she should not assume every closed channel would remain closed forever. Meghan took those words as reassurance that another face-to-face meeting might eventually be arranged. The Queen Consort later described that exchange in a documented account prepared for the household, insisting she meant only that communication should not be abandoned completely. Catherine learned about the remark days later and immediately warned Camilla that ambiguity was dangerous when private security was involved. She said a hopeful phrase could easily be heard as permission. Camilla insisted she had promised no access and authorized no visit, but Catherine believed the damage was already possible because expectation had been created inside the family, where certainty was needed. Now that old misunderstanding had reached the gate. Catherine looked at Meghan differently, realizing the arrival may have been built on words spoken weeks earlier. Camilla could no longer explain them in private. William was approaching, both women were waiting, and Catherine had no intention of softening the boundary she believed had already been tested once too often. There was no cheering crowd, no cameras, and no carefully prepared palace statement to soften what happened next. Only Catherine, Meghan, Camilla, 2 security officers, and the growing awareness that William was approaching. Catherine had already decided the estate would remain closed. Meghan had already decided she would not leave without being heard. Then Catherine said the words that changed the confrontation completely. This was not a palace engagement. This was her family's home. Catherine held her ground while William remained several moments away, leaving her to manage the confrontation. Camilla stayed close, trying to prevent either woman from saying something that could not be taken back. The security officers waited for a direct instruction, because Meghan's connection to the royal family made the moment sensitive, though the access rule itself was clear. No approved visit meant no entry. Catherine looked directly at Meghan and spoke with controlled anger. "You cannot arrive here without permission and expect the gates to open." Meghan answered that she was not asking for ceremony or special treatment. She wanted 10 minutes to speak about Harry and William before more staff messages turned a family problem into something colder. Catherine heard desperation in the words, but she also heard pressure, and that made her anger sharper. Meghan then suggested William might be avoiding a conversation he did not want to face. Catherine reacted immediately. She said privacy was not cowardice, and that forcing proximity would never rebuild trust. Meghan insisted she had tried other routes. Catherine replied that trying another route did not give anyone the right to choose the doorstep of a private home. Camilla finally stepped forward and admitted she had intended to speak with William later that week about arranging a controlled conversation. The Queen Consort, the wife of the reigning monarch, said she believed a neutral meeting could stop the family dispute from hardening further. Catherine turned away from Meghan and faced Camilla instead. Her fury shifted into something more painful. She asked why she had never been told. Camilla hesitated. That pause mattered. Catherine took one deliberate step back and asked whether private access had been discussed behind their backs. Meghan watched the exchange, realizing the argument was no longer only about her arrival. Camilla tried to explain that she had discussed communication, not entry, but the distinction no longer comforted Catherine. William arrived in time to hear the question. Catherine turned toward him and asked whether Camilla had been negotiating family access without their knowledge. Meghan's attempted entry had triggered the confrontation, but his arrival exposed the deeper battle. Who had the authority to decide where family compassion ended and royal boundaries began? William did not need to raise his voice. The moment he reached the entrance, everyone understood that the argument had changed. This was his residence, his security perimeter, and his decision. Yet Camilla was standing between two sides of a family that had spent years retreating into separate camps. She believed one conversation might stop the damage from becoming permanent. Catherine believed the same intervention threatened the very boundaries created to keep their family safe. William listened before answering to make one thing clear. Residential access could not be decided through informal family assurances, hints, or assumptions. His household followed a controlled visitor process, meaning entry to the private residence required direct approval from the people responsible for the home and its security. Titles, history, and family ties did not erase that rule. Catherine watched him carefully, knowing the rule protected their children. Camilla explained that she had never authorized Meghan to enter. She said her intention had been narrower, to create a path for Harry's concerns to reach William without another chain of cold messages passing through aides. The Queen Consort believed silence had become dangerous in its own way. She told the prince that closing every door might protect peace for one afternoon while making bitterness permanent. William did not interrupt. Then he looked at Catherine, and she recognized the expression immediately. He was angry at Meghan's arrival, but he was also disappointed that Camilla had allowed uncertainty to grow around something that should have been absolute. Catherine said nothing at first. Her silence told him she understood exactly what it meant. Meghan finally explained why she had come. Harry had prepared a private message for William, but she had deliberately brought no letter, file, or formal document, because she believed another piece of palace correspondence would only turn an emotional appeal into paperwork. A private message, in this context, meant words intended for one family member, rather than an official statement. She wanted William to hear the substance personally. William shocked all three women. He said he was willing to hear the message, but not inside the estate. Meghan would not cross the private boundary Catherine had defended, yet she would not be dismissed without being heard. Camilla immediately suggested a neutral location where the conversation could happen carefully. Catherine pulled William aside before anything was settled. She told him quietly that accepting a conversation that day could teach Meghan that arriving without permission still produced access to the discussion she wanted. William had found a compromise on the gate, but compromise carried a cost. Catherine was about to learn that protecting the entrance did not mean controlling what happened beyond it. The gates never opened for Meghan. On paper, Catherine had won the immediate argument. Yet victory felt strangely hollow. Meghan was escorted away from the private entrance without entering the estate. Camilla began arranging a controlled conversation elsewhere, and William returned inside carrying an expression Catherine could not read. The boundary had survived. Trust had not. Within minutes, 3 separate relationships were under strain, and the silence inside the residence felt heavier than the confrontation that had just ended outside. Meghan left after being told William would consider a meeting at a neutral royal property under agreed conditions. A neutral royal property meant a location connected to the family, but separate from the private home at the center of the dispute, allowing conversation without weakening residential security. Staff were told to record the episode as a private family security incident rather than an official royal engagement. That distinction mattered because the conflict concerned personal access, not public duty. Catherine walked into a quiet sitting room, removed her coat, and finally told William what had been building inside her. She believed Camilla had undermined them by leaving Meghan with the impression that persistence might succeed. The prince agreed that the boundary had to remain firm, but he refused to let one badly handled visit decide every future choice involving Harry. Catherine heard the logic, yet the answer still hurt. She feared he was taking another burden onto himself when he was already carrying too many. Camilla left the estate, carrying her own sense of failure. Alone in the car, she told an aide to cancel every remaining piece of informal outreach. The Queen Consort understood that her attempt to keep communication alive had placed her directly between Catherine and William, and she no longer trusted Ambiguity to do anything except create fresh resentment. Her effort to prevent estrangement had instead deepened suspicion. Meghan later learned through a direct security briefing that William had not ordered her removal in anger. He had specifically asked that she be treated calmly and offered a structured alternative. The news unsettled her because it challenged the belief that he wanted no contact at all. She had been denied entry, but not completely denied a voice. William waited until the household had gone quiet before asking Catherine to stay. He told her there was something in Harry's intended message she deserved to hear before anyone else. Catherine sat back down, anger giving way to apprehension. The confrontation outside was finished, but behind that closed door, the couple were about to confront the fear beneath her fury. And what William said next would force Catherine to separate protecting her home from protecting her husband. Hours after Meghan had disappeared from the estate road and the security team had returned to routine, Catherine was still awake. William found her sitting alone, the fury gone from her face and replaced by something far more revealing. She was frightened, not of Meghan herself, but of watching private family boundaries collapse, one exception at a time. For the first time that day, there were no guards, no aides, no Camilla, and no argument to hide behind. William sat with her and explained what Harry had actually wanted conveyed. The message was not a demand for entry to the estate. It was a request for a predictable method of contact whenever a serious family matter emerged. something direct enough to prevent private disagreements from becoming public battles. A private family channel, in simple terms, meant an agreed way for relatives to speak, without forcing every issue through staff or official palace systems. The prince believed that distinction mattered. Catherine listened, then admitted what she had not said at the gate. Her anger had come from more than Meghan's arrival. She feared that every attempt at reconciliation would eventually require another exception, another compromise, another reason to let private family space become negotiable. Their children had grown up under constant public attention, and Catherine believed the estate existed partly to protect them from exactly that pressure. William reached across the table and told her she had been right to defend their home. But he also told her something harder. Protecting a boundary did not require permanently rejecting the person standing outside it. Catherine understood the difference. Meghan's greatest mistake had not been wanting a conversation. It had been trying to create one by arriving at a place whose privacy had already been clearly protected. William then made the decision that finally changed the direction of the crisis. He would meet Harry directly. No Meghan carrying messages, no Catherine speaking for him, no Camilla trying to mediate between sides. The brothers would take responsibility for their own dispute, and whatever came from that meeting would belong to them rather than the women caught between them. Catherine agreed, but she set one condition. Camilla had to hear directly from both of them that no future reconciliation, however sincere, would override the rules protecting their private residence. William accepted. By morning, anger had become clarity. The family was finally ready to replace improvised interventions with one boundary nobody could misunderstand. And that clarity was about to collide with a very public version of what had happened. By the following morning, a private family confrontation had become impossible to contain. The public did not know every word exchanged at the gate, but one image carried enough emotional force to define the story. Catherine, standing near the secured entrance, while Camilla faced her from several feet away, both women visibly tense. Newspapers framed it as a royal rupture. Broadcasters called it a battle over access. Inside the family, however, a very different resolution was already taking shape. Catherine hated how quickly the argument was being flattened into a rivalry between two royal women. Palace communications confirmed only that an unplanned private visit had occurred and that normal residential security procedures had been followed. A palace communication, in simple terms, is an official message issued on behalf of the royal household to explain or limit public discussion. The statement avoided the family dispute itself, but that silence only fueled debate over what the confrontation really meant. Camilla felt the distortion personally. Over breakfast, she opened a newspaper and found herself described as Meghan's defender against Catherine. She folded the paper almost immediately. The Queen Consort knew she had not tried to defeat Catherine's position. She had tried to prevent complete family isolation, and that effort had failed badly enough to make her look as though she had chosen a side. Catherine, meanwhile, believed the central issue had been lost entirely. Could her family's private home remain protected from unexpected confrontation? Outside Windsor Castle, the argument became public theater. A small crowd gathered while broadcasters delivered live updates, and one morning newspaper appeared with the large front-page phrase, "The gate stays closed," above an image of the tense aftermath. Windsor Castle, one of the monarch's principal royal residences, often becomes a public focus whenever family events carry national attention. That single headline turned a private security boundary into a symbol of something much larger. William refused to let the headlines decide the next move. He contacted Harry directly and agreed to a private meeting on neutral ground. The prince made the conditions clear. Meghan would not accompany him. Catherine would not act as intermediary, and Camilla would no longer carry messages between the two sides. Harry accepted the arrangement, finally removing the women from the center of a conflict that belonged primarily to the brothers. Catherine then made one final request. She wanted to speak with Camilla alone, not to reopen the argument, but to close it properly. The world had already chosen its dramatic version of the story. The real verdict, however, would come away from the headlines, when Catherine and Camilla sat opposite each other and decided exactly what the gate had come to mean. In the end, Meghan did not enter William's private estate. Catherine did not apologize for stopping her. Camilla did not defend the confusion that had helped bring her there. Yet the confrontation did something none of them expected. It forced a fractured family to define the difference between reconciliation and access. One could still be offered without surrendering the other. Behind the anger, embarrassment, and wounded pride, a new rule emerged. Family conversations might continue, but private boundaries would no longer be negotiated in moments of emotion. William made that rule permanent. No relative whatsoever would ever enter the private estate without prior household authorization. Household authorization simply meant direct approval from the people responsible for the residence and its security, not an informal promise passed through relatives or aides. The prince framed it as protection, not punishment, because Catherine and their children needed one place where family conflict could not arrive without warning. Harry accepted a separate meeting with William on neutral ground, removing Meghan, Catherine, and Camilla from the role of messengers. The brothers would speak for themselves. That decision mattered because years of tension had been filtered through other people, allowing every misunderstanding to grow before either man faced the other directly. Catherine then met Camilla privately. The Queen Consort admitted that trying to keep every channel open had created ambiguity she should have prevented. Catherine accepted the explanation, but told her calmly that her children's home could never become bargaining territory. Camilla agreed. There was no embrace and no sudden repair of trust. Yet when Catherine stood to leave, she heard the words she needed. Camilla agreed. Camilla understood why she had refused to bend. Meghan's arrival had failed in its immediate purpose. She never crossed the gate. But the confrontation forced William and Harry toward direct communication, something years of careful distance had avoided. Catherine also understood something larger. Wanting reconciliation was not the mistake. Trying to force access to create it was. The monarchy did not emerge perfectly healed, but it emerged clearer. Meghan learned that determination could not replace permission. Camilla learned that mediation without firm limits could deepen the very division she hoped to solve. William accepted responsibility for his relationship with Harry. Catherine proved that defending a private home did not require closing every path toward forgiveness. The gate remained closed that day, but the family finally stopped confusing a closed gate with a closed future. Catherine had defended the line she believed mattered most, and by the end, everyone understood exactly where that line stood. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.